Hey everybody, this is Dream. Today we have a little fat or 6 game slate, for DraftKings basketball NBA here. Slate starts at 7 o'clock. We have some good games here. A couple teams are playing them back to backs, but overall should be a really good slate. Some high scoring games. Let's get into the injury report. Before I do that, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel. With that said, let's get an injury report. So for the Pistons, Cunningham is questionable. For the Raptors, Van Vliet is questionable. Siakam and Achua both out. For the Pacers, Duarte is out. For the 76ers, Harden is out. For the Hornets, Dennis Smith Jr. is questionable and Hayward is out. For the Heat, Hero is out. Hero is questionable. For the Rockets, Fernando and Tate are both out. For the Blazers, Nurkic is questionable and Grant and Winslow are probable and Sharp is questionable. For the Mavs, Wood is probable. For the Celtics, Brogdon is questionable, and so is Al Horford. Then for the Hawks, Okanagu is out. So with that said, let's get into the players I do like today. As you can see, I have my core plays listed on the sheet here. Jalen Green, Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, Jaden Ivey, and Jaylen Brown. Now those are subject to change due to the potential injury situations changing as the slate gets closer to time. But overall, those are the guys I like the most today. So let's go and get through the slate here. So my first guy to take a look at is Fred VanVleet. Now he is questionable, so we do need to be aware of that. But he didn't have a very good game yesterday, but he played less minutes, and Oklahoma City got ahead early, so he didn't play deep into the game. So I expect him to bounce back here and have a really good game. Obviously, his price point is around the same it's been on average all season, and he's definitely capable, especially with Siakam out, to having a really solid game here. He's been hitting a lot of threes lately, which is really boosting his stats as well. So I really do like him on the slate, assuming he plays. Then we're going to look at Jalen Green here for Houston. Now, Jalen Green has been really pretty consistent all season. He's had a couple games there in the middle that were not so good, but he's gotten back on track where he's shooting the ball well again. And he's getting some pretty good peripheral stats, which I like. And so he's been one of the focal points of the Rockets offense, and I think he's just a really solid play on the slate. Now, Andrew Nembhard, we are going to have to make certain that he is starting again. He's been playing about 30 to 35 minutes in starts so far, and his price really hasn't come up enough to push away from him. Even when he wasn't starting, he would have some games where he would play, 15 minutes, and he could almost 5x in those. Now that he's starting and playing a significant amount of minutes, he's actually doing pretty decent. So I do think he's a good secondary decent play today, especially if you need to save money someplace. Then we're going to look at Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. He's another guy he's been playing extremely well all season. He is the focal point of the Pacers defense or offense rather, and he has been dominating all season. His price point has come up some, but I still think in this matchup he's in a good spot. Then we're going to look at Jaden Ivey here for Detroit. Now, Ivey, obviously, his price point has actually come down a little bit because he's had a couple inconsistencies, but he's a really solid player. And again, yesterday he didn't play super deep into the game. He only played 25 minutes because the Knicks got ahead early. But overall, he typically does better than that, and I expect he's had a couple off games, but I expect him to bounce back today and have a really solid game, especially since he's got a lot of the offense aspect of the game in his favor with some injuries. And if Cunningham doesn't play, then he definitely get a boost as well. Then we're going to look at Buddy Hield for Indiana. Now, he's been extremely consistent this season, and his price point has come up some, but he is about in the same boat as he's been all season for the most part. But he's getting lots of shots and lots of opportunities. He had one game last game where he only had 20 fantasy points, where he really didn't get many peripheral stats. But I think he was being guarded a lot by Jamal Murray in that game. So I expect this game to be kind of a bounce back where he is able to do really well. Then we're going to look at DeAnthony Melton for Philadelphia. Now, his price point has come up quite a bit, so he's not a must-play by any stretch of imagination, but he is pretty good. He is starting, and he does have tendency to have, big games when he starts, and so it's just a matter of having the right opportunity, and this is a pretty good opportunity for him going up against Atlanta. Then we're going to look at Jaylen Brown. Jaylen. Shoot. Oh, I forgot I have him on this here. Sorry about that. He's at $8,500. He's been playing pretty consistently this season. He's had a couple down games, but overall, he's got some nice upside in this matchup against Detroit, and so I think he's a pretty good option on the slate. OG Anunoby, now he didn't have a good game the last time out, but again, that game was kind of a blowout, so he didn't play as many minutes. But if he can get up to 38, 39 minutes with Siakam being out, he should be able to, get to where he needs to go, which is around 35 to 40 points, and he's definitely capable of doing that here. Then we're going to look at Sadiq Bey for Detroit here against Boston. Now, obviously, going up against Boston is not super ideal, and he's been a little bit inconsistent this season, but he has some upside in this one with injuries. I don't think Al Horford will play likely, and so he's likely going to have some opportunity in this game. Then we got Eric Gordon here for Houston. Now, he's an interesting spot. He's been pretty consistent this season, getting around 20-ish fantasy points per game. And if you need to save some money and it's right in this price range, then he's a good guy to take a look at. He does get a lot of shots and for them, and he's pretty consistent with the minutes, as you can see. But he does rely, somewhat on his shooting in order to really do well. But again, even the last game, he went 3 for 10 with 1 3, and he got 18.5 fantasy points. And his price is cheap enough that you can kind of take that risk a little bit. Then we're going to look at Isaiah Stewart here for Detroit. He had a really solid game yesterday, so keep in mind that he is in a back-to-back. But his price point's a little bit too cheap for what he's been doing this season. He has 35, 40-point upside, and he definitely has the capability to do that, especially if Al Horford is out, which I'm going to guess that he'll likely be out. Then we're going to look at Jason Tatum for Boston. Now, he's another guy who has been really solid this season, pretty consistent. Had a couple games in the mid-30s, but overall he typically gets around 45 to 55 fantasy points in most games, and I expect him to continue that in this particular matchup against Detroit. Then we're going to look at Zion Williamson here for New Orleans. He's been extremely good when he plays a full complement of minutes. He's one of the guys in the NBA that sometimes gets injured throughout the game, so he doesn't play as much or whatever. But overall, he has a lot of upside. He's a dominant player when he's healthy. And in this matchup, he's going to have pretty much free reign to do whatever he wants because he's just not very good at stopping players like him. Then we're going to look at Miles Turner here for Indiana. Now, he's been a really good player so far this season, but he's been a little bit inconsistent, and he was hurt to start the year. But now that he's been playing, he seems like he's starting to get going. The only real risk with him is if he doesn't play as many minutes. And not only that, because Isaiah Jackson's been kind of chomping at the bit to get more minutes. And while he probably won't get more minutes in this particular game, Turner's going to have to he's got to kind of keep continuing, especially with his price going up. He's going to keep showing up and getting double-doubles in order to keep the playing time up. Then we're going to look at Clint Capella here for Atlanta against Philadelphia. This is a tough matchup, but he's been good against them this year and last year, and I expect him to continue to be good. Ironically, the fact that he has to play more in these games because of other big guys that are good, and he seems to rack up more rebounds in those games. He's actually been rebounding extremely well lately as well. He just needs to get the points to really pay off here, and he's been doing that more than he hasn't lately, so I expect him to have a really solid game here against Philadelphia. And then Mason Plumlee for Charlotte. He's still a little bit too cheap for what he's been doing. This is a tough matchup against Miami, but he's been pretty consistent lately in scoring around 30 fantasy points or more, and he just needs 26 to 5x. So he's a pretty safe play at a decent price if you want to take that play, but it's a little bit risky because especially if Bam's playing a lot, they're a pretty good defensive team. So with that said, that's what I have for DraftKings. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.